Peace be with you, Divine High Priestess activated. Come on in. If you're new here, welcome. If you're returning back, what's good? I salute the divinity in you. You should be saluting the divinity within yourself. Hopefully everybody is doing well, right? Hopefully you're going within, you're feeling well, you're tapping in, you're learning new things, gaining new knowledge, applying it to your life, right? I always say, what good is knowing better and not doing better, right? That doesn't make sense. So I feel like when you learn certain things or you get certain truths about certain information, no matter what it is, one should always be mindful to sit with it, be still, go within and decide what you need to apply to your own life, right? So today we're going to be talking about sexual energy, divine feminine energy, womb healing, inner man, allowing your inner man to heal your inner woman by way of the scales, okay? So the scales, quite literally. Now, whenever we think of scales, we get a picture of scales in our minds. It's so interesting the way it looks. But see those scales as your right hip and your left hip, okay? And then the center of your back, which is your spine, would be the center of the scales. So in sexual energy, by way of masculine feminine energy, one is charged with one energy or the other, depending on how receptive you are to sex, right? So the left side represents the feminine energy. Coincidentally, it's in alignment. It's in alignment with your feminine energy, where your heart is, right? So your nurturing side. Hold on, y'all. I got all kinds of little things going on around me here. So your left side of the body. So let's talk trauma, let's talk trauma. When you have a lover, okay, feminines that violates you, or you're cheated on, or you're made to feel inadequate, or you're made to feel insecure by way of not validating the relationship to be something that's nurturing, right? It's like, I can't sum this relationship up to be something that is good for me because the person that I was receptive to by way of being a receiver violated my feminine energy, right? So let's talk about it. How does that resonate in the body? It resonates quite literally in the physical body, in the feminine physical body, which is the left side, okay? The breast area, the heart, brain coherence. Here you are, you've received somebody who you've allowed to plug into your energy. Now, if one is out of balance, this could absolutely thrust you in a very unhealthy way into your masculine energy. I'm not gonna love anymore. Maybe you'll go lose weight, or maybe you'll cut your hair. Or a lot of women I've seen be so traumatized, they go towards the same sex, which I think is really interesting. When I meet women who have been with men before and they end up, even co-creating, they've had children and they're like, oh, I'm gay, right? And they denounce their femininity, or they go from being feminine to being very, very masculine. They take on a masculine appearance. Either way, one cannot rob themselves of one or the other. The masculine energy, right side, left side, has to be balanced. Even with single mothers, we find that oftentimes, especially when they're raising boys, they are forced to get into daddy mode, father mode. I feel like they do that subconsciously. Sometimes women forget about themselves, or they will over-sexualize themselves to validate their feminine energy on the external to prove that, hey, see me, I'm not hurt. But internally, the internal physical body, that electric body knows the truth, right? And so how does that resonate in the body? What are the signs, It's the water that needs to flow. Water. I just saw that. Cancerian energy, the breastplate of righteousness, the nurturing area, right? It takes you back to your childhood, how you saw relationships. So it literally resonates in the physical body with hip pain, left hip pain, sciatica. Sometimes the body will lock up. Sometimes it becomes hardened because it doesn't want to allow things to flow, right? it restricts itself on a physical level, because spiritually you're saying, no, this can't be real. This did not happen to me. I wasn't hurt like this. Why would you hurt me like this? So the physical body starts to respond to the emotional aspects of yourself, right? Some of us know these things, you know, maybe you've heard this before. Maybe I could be saying this in a way that maybe you needed to hear it differently, or maybe you're taking parts of this and making it your own, which is really good about information. I highly recommend that, you know. I support that energy as I support myself in taking in knowledge. But as I was meditating, you know, just getting into the breathing exercises, realizing how we breathe improperly. A lot of people are taught to hold their stomachs in and breathe from their diaphragm, but really your breathing should start in the center of your chest, also known as your sternum. And what this does is it creates a balance in between your lower half, your low vibrations, your sexual desires, right? And your higher vibrations, meaning the heart and above, the heart and the brain being connected, right? And so in the center of that, you know, as I was breathing into that center, learning how to breathe properly again, consciously, right? I feel like we've tapped into this ability to breathe properly, but sometimes we touch the surface and we don't really know what we're doing, but we just know we're doing something else and it feels good. But when you intentionally know better or how to breathe better, right? One does so. Even with me sitting here, right? I'm very mindful of the way we put more weight on the right side, right? That's the way the schools teach us. They teach us to be more masculine dominated. You know, a lot of people are more right-handed than they are left-handed. And then you meet people that are ambidextrous. These people are very, very balanced. They're peculiar people. Oftentimes, you know, they're being labeled as dyslexic, but they see things differently, right? So once we remove these labels and we just get to the physical, spiritual body of it all, right? Feminine energy is vital. So we heard this big movement, you know, oh, it's the return of the divine feminine, and divine masculine. So everybody was looking outside of themselves like, oh, that's my person. Oh, he's over there or she's over there. When in reality, your person is really within. Like it really does have to be an in and then out type of an energy, right? So let's just say you're a feminine who's been hurt. And her feminine energy is challenging her. Her feminine energy is lying dormant. Her feminine energy is, you know, dead and needs to be resurrected. Maybe you're questioning your physical body. Maybe you've gained a lot of weight, right? Due to stress. And so when we say, you know, you go through a healing process, yin yang energy, feng shui energy, the scales, it always has to be balanced. If I'm tipped too much to my masculine energy, I'm going to come off very brute. I'm going to come off very shrewd. Not that that is an issue, but to myself, how I'm presenting myself to the world is how I tap into those frequencies by way of being open. So seeking balance within is absolutely key. It is a form of physical, spiritual care, right? When you care about yourself, you do better with yourself, right? Maybe you've made some mistakes in learning how to go within, right? So when we talk about healing the feminine nature, one has to allow their inner man literally to heal their inner feminine. So right side of the body, left side of the body, it's an ebb and it's a flow. It's an ebb and it's a flow. This is why when you see women and they walk and they got this sexy walk, men are very attracted to that because it moves like water. There's something about the flow. Really, they're doing masculine, feminine. Oh, look at them. They're so balanced. Everybody's attracted to that balance. That's really what it's about. Or if you see a man walking in a very masculine way, right? Usually they step more with the right side of their body. And there's a rhythm. There's balance. They even stand a certain way. But when that balance is not in balance, the scales are being tipped to one or more sides of you, which is not always good, right? Now, after you experience a violation of the spirit, a violation of your body, yeah, you might become a little masculine, right? You become the man that you hate. It's like trauma. It's like a toxic. You become this hateful man, right? And then you see feminines that attack other feminines. Why are you attacking another feminine? That's like, it's like annihilating your feminine energy. Whenever a feminine attacks another feminine for reasons that maybe are stem from jealousy, betrayal, hurt, maybe this woman was cheated on, or they just don't like women, or maybe they had a bad experience with their mother or their sisters, or whatever the case, whatever their feminine experiences are, it puts them in a toxic masculinity type of an energy. It is unnatural for a feminine to hate another feminine. Least you hate the feminine within, but sometimes the feminine is lying dormant, right? So with trauma, what does that look like? Throwing off your pH balance, throwing off your cycle, right? When you've been through trauma, when you've been on the receptive end and you've allowed a man to plug into you, right? Not thinking this is going to lead me to shutting down my feminine energy. Okay? Never foreseeing that. So when there's trauma, or you birth a child, or you're a single mom, you're being thrusted into a masculine energy, not really allowing yourself to be feminine. And feminine has nothing to do with the external. Those are the perks, the natural feminine flow of you, your hands, your nails, how you care for yourself, the things that let people on the outside of you know, oh, you're a feminine, right? You're presenting yourself to the world to be a certain way. And then there's clothes, and then there's shoes, because that's an extension of your expression and how you want to show up in the world, right? So when that feminine energy is abused, yeah, I can't make this up. Look at the water and look at the land. Feminine energy, water, okay? And 1 foot on land, temperance, balance, feng shui, right? So when that feminine energy is thrown out of balance and there's trauma, there's violation, there's cheating, there's third-party situations, not only that, on a biological level, you're now tied to other people that maybe that person violated you with, right? So now you're picking up on their energy. He slept with somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody, and they were all cheating with somebody. So now you got these soul attachments, right? Then you got to break the soul attachment. But the only way to heal that feminine energy is to allow your inner masculine energy to cater to you. You need to become within the man that you dreamed and ordained somebody else to be on the external, right? One cannot require for somebody else to cater to their feminine energy, lest you not recognize your own feminine energy in the way that your inner man has to heal your inner feminine. It's the right side of the body. So shift that right side of the body. There's a lot of power on that right side of the body, right? We drive and we use our right foot predominantly, the gears are on the right side. Everything in the world is teaching you to move improperly and denounce your feminine energy, whether we realize this or not. But now that we're becoming more conscious, we have to do better. Now that we're aware of it, we have to become more aware, right? I remember talking to a chiropractic friend of mine, and she said that she got a lot of truck drivers that would come to her to get realignments of their backs because they were driving for hours, really they were sitting improperly, breathing improperly, a lot of stress when you're a truck driver. You got to maneuver this big vehicle, you have to get there within a certain amount of time. There's the external forces, and then internally things are being thrown out of whack. She goes, I found that 90% of these people, these guys, some of them are women too, who were interesting in their masculine energy. It's a very male-dominated industry, right? But needless to say, she said a lot of them put their wallets in their back pockets on the right side of their body, some on the left. She said either way, it throws you off. It constantly has them sitting like this. And it's the little things, she said, because most of them had wallets that were like 2-3 inches thick, business cards, they just put it in, and then they're sitting down and they're driving. So they're out of alignment, just like this. One is making them tilt their scales to one side and or the other. And predominantly you're using your right side. So what happens to your feminine energy? it lies dormant. It can't function, right? Even in school, most people 9 times out of 10 are right-handed, right? And then you have your left-handed people, which I find are very creative people. We'll go more into that later, but I want to focus, stay on topic with focusing in on the divine feminine energy and water, the flow. The water in your body has memory. This is what triggers trauma, right? It could be a movie that could remind you of a traumatic situation. It could be seeing somebody that looks like your ex that reminds you of a traumatic situation. It could be something from childhood that triggers you, right? So this is why it's so important to balance that out at a really young age, if at all possible, and to teach this to children. But immediately we're taught, oh, hey, girls play with dolls, boys play with trucks, right? These are labels. These are stereotypes to put us in roles, if you will, of what the world deems for us to be, kind of molding and shaping what these external forces want us to be. And so then when you get into a relationship, that shit plays out in your relationship. It's like, oh, wait a minute, you got guys that are afraid to hold babies. They're like, well, no, I want to wait until he's like 3-4 years old. Then when he can run and jump, or when she can run and jump, I'll deal with her. But that's the nurturing stage. When the baby comes out, that's the bonding time, right? But remember, they were told never to play with dolls. They were told that playing with dolls was an attack on their sexuality, and that people might think that they want to be feminine. So really preventing boys from tapping into their feminine nature has thrown off the yin yang balance between divine feminine, divine masculine, and creating the 10 of cups. How can one create a decent family dynamic if within you're taking on this role, trying to figure out what the heck is going on? Yeah, look, I can't make this up. The 4 of cups in the reverse, it's like water out of balance, Our bodies are primarily made up of water, okay? So that feminine energy, that feminine water. Earlier I was thinking, about that song, Marvin Gaye, when he talks about sexual healing. Sex is really healing. It can be with 2 very high vibrational people that respect each other's masculine, feminine energy within. So feminines, when that trauma is there, right? Heartbreak, heartache, somebody disappointed you. Yeah, look, it blocks your flow. Look at the Cancerian energy. Cancerian represents water. It blocks your flow. So what is that? UTIs, bladder infections, not drinking enough water, lack of self-care. You shut down the feminine nature and you become more masculine, right? Maybe you're going to the gym now and you're literally turning into the man you don't like because you need to channel that energy, but you've locked away the feminine energy, right? And that's not for everybody. That's just a prime example of just some random, situation that I feel could be quite common. And maybe everybody can resonate with that. But in terms of like masculine, feminine energy within, right? The scales are within the lower back. That is your Libran energy. So when you think about the scales, envision your left hip, your right hip, right? It has to be balanced. So when you walk around, right? When you stand up, how you're standing, it's good to stand with a slight bend if you can, just to keep the flow going so that you flow upward and downward. You have this flow, ebb and flow from the top of your crown to the bottom of your feet. But when one is traumatized, okay, we restrict flow. We restrict, we want justice. We want karma. Hey, that was wrong. What you did. Why did you cheat on me? Why did you hate on me? Why did you stab me in the back? And let's just assume it wasn't a sexual relationship, but that's usually the biggest violation in connection, because the 2 become one. And when the 2 become one and somebody's made a decision that the other one doesn't agree with, it could feel like a death, quite literally. Parts of yourself, right? That you've given away, that you want back, right? It's like, why did you do that? You didn't give me the opportunity to make the choice for myself, right? But let's just assume that this is a friendship, right? Waters in your body. The water holds memory. That is your Akashic records. Your Akashic records is your water within your body. Okay? So where there are blockages, it will absolutely restrict flow. If you're restricting flow, if you're traumatized, if you're stuck in a thought or a moment, you will hold your breath, right? We're taught to hold our stomachs in because they're saying a flat stomach, ooh, that's what it is. but it's really traumatizing to hold your stomach in like that. You're restricting your flow, and you're only allowing for breath to go up, not down. When the breath has to flow through the entire body from right to left, left to right, right? Depending on how you move. Okay. So pay attention. When you enter a room, do you enter with your right foot? Are you entering in power with your masculine energy? Or do you enter in with your left side? Usually people enter in with their right foot, right? Even when we're driving, right? We get out on our left leg, which appears to be the weakest side of our bodies because of the way the world has set it up with our cars, how we get in. So I've been changing that a little bit. Just a little commercial break. I've been taking both my legs and swinging them out of the car before I stand up so that I can ergonomically kind of be in like a squat position and get up from there, as opposed to putting pressure on my left side that has been weakened, right? Which is my feminine energy. And when I mean weakened, beyond the trauma, there's the healing from trauma, and then there are the physical things that we do to weaken that feminine energy. Walking incorrectly, breathing incorrectly. Breathing is so vital. Oh my God. Breathing is more important than food. Yes, I said it. Breathing is more important than food, honey. Breathing is your food. Breathing represents flow, air energy, Aquarius, Libra, Gemini energy, the scales. Breathing, it affects your lymphatic system, your nervous system, how your antennas are being connected to the environment. It affects your intuition. That's why breathing from your center, the center is at the center of the chest, but I also like to remind myself to breathe from my connection. And my connection is the belly button, right? That's what connected you to your mother. That was a cord. That's where you got your food. That's where you got your communication. If your mother was a sad woman being, that was pregnant with you, you're going to feel that in the womb. A lot of those traumas that we had to undo started in the womb. If your mother was a single mother, if your father passed away, that's all things that the woman holds in her physical body. Now, when she's neglecting her feminine energy out of ignorance, right? Okay, she doesn't know any better. It's easy to pass that trauma down to the child through action, thought, deed, fear. Yeah, projecting that onto the child internally. But the balance, right? Allowing your man to heal you, your inner man, right? Balance, Gemini energy. Gemini represents inner communication, telepathic communication within. And the telepathic communication, yes, you have some external forces, supernatural beings that you could pick up messages from, but the external conversation by way of your internal conversation is really your lower and your higher self. Look at your lower self. Look at her down here. She's down. She's broken. She's got her head down. Look. She's damn near laying down. And then you have the higher self up there. Can you see her? Look at how balanced she is. Aquarius energy, Scorpio energy, sexual energy and flow, water energy, right? Then you got the Leo energy and the Taurus energy, throat chakra energy. That's really what the wheel represents. So the wheel is really your wheel of fortune within, right? The lower and the higher chakras. The Nine of Cups, and this is how you get your wish fulfillment. Piscean energy, more water. Water, water, water. Speak to the water in your body. That is your holy water. Bless your water, right? Your water flows from your divine feminine energy. The masculine energy will be out of balance if the feminine energy is not feeding that masculine energy within, right? I heard, I don't know the guy's name, but the guy that Cardi B is pregnant by, I read something where he told her, or she said, she mentioned in an interview, she says, he told me, let me heal you. She said she sat back and was like, oh. But in reality, let's translate that. He can't heal her. She can only heal herself and be healed. But in reality, the translation and what she got from it was, I'm still attractive. I'm still wanted. Oh my goodness, I've had 3 babies. I've been with somebody that's violated me, somebody that has mentally abused me psychologically. So to have masculine energy say, I'm going to hold a space of love for you, let me heal you. This first had to have been somebody that could have seen within her that something was broken. She was showing that brokenness, right? So she channeled the energy into an album, quite literally. But in reality, yeah, one can question their beauty, question their validity, question their value, right? When they've been violated by a partner who maybe they feel like, I gave you the best that I had. Like, whoa, my best wasn't good enough? Whoa. So you shut down. Maybe you go into, long periods of celibacy in order to heal that sexual energy. Now, interesting enough, Offset being a toxic masculine, let's just call him what he is. Now he's triggered because the goal was to break her feminine energy enough that he's like, look, you got 3 babies by me. You're not going nowhere. You will take this sex when I give it to you. You will be available to me. You will not respect yourself. You will sign up for relationships that you didn't ask for through me. And when she declined, this sent him into a downward spiral. He too channeled his energy into an album, right? And I'm only using them because I feel like that's a really good example of violation of spirit. It's so public. It's kind of hard not to see the story. But with that being said, she basically manifested an external version of her masculine energy that maybe she hadn't tapped into. Maybe she was too deep in her feminine energy. Maybe she was too nurturing, overly nurturing, right? That she allowed things that were disrespectful, quite literally. If you're in a relationship and you're saying, oh, it's complicated. Nah, you lying to yourself. You need to get out of that. What's complicated is what's going on within. Let's breathe into the heart. Let's breathe into the lower back. Let's breathe into the scales, left hip, right hip, and balance something out. Your tailbone is the bottom of the scales. You got the scales. The scales kind of sit like that, and that's the base, and then you got the 2 scales on the side. This is your feminine energy, your masculine energy, but the 2 have to move like this in the number 8 and the snake energy, right? That's the Kundalini energy. So you got to distribute that energy back and forth as you breathe into the left side of your body. To the left side of your body, and breathe into the right side of your body, right? Until you balance that energy out. Now, the nervous system, right? You got sciatica. That all affects your flow. So when you're violated, it throws off your body's ergonomics internally. How is it that the vital organs can get flow? How is it that the kidneys are supposed to flow? How is it that the bladder is supposed to release what it needs to release if there's something within that is in an imbalance? One has to know, what am I communicating to myself? Look at the magician. The magician represents Gemini energy. Notice the yin yang energy above her head. Look, this is how you should see that water flowing in the inside of you from left side to right side, and keep going up. That number 8, right? Then you hit the right side of your ribs. Just imagining that water flowing. Then you go all the way up to the shoulders, and all the way up to the ears, and all the way up to it's ebb and flow. The infinity symbol is within, right? The magician. Gemini energy. Then you become the alchemist. The alchemist is taking elements. You're taking your earth, your physical body. You're taking your water, your physical body, your water, right? What flows out of your body, okay? Right? And you're putting it in balance. You're taking your air and you're breathing properly so that the water flows within you, so that your earth is grounded, so that you're balanced, right? And then you eliminate lower back pains, right? A fear of having money. You eliminate, knee pains, which is really like a fear of moving forward. Foot pain is usually a fear of moving forward. Yeah, things like that. It has to flow. Piscean energy at the feet. Imagine walking on water. But also remember that one has to be grounded, keeping your masculine energy on the ground, right side, left side, temperance energy, keeping one foot in the water. Balance. So trauma Seven of Cups, illusions, right? Sometimes you can have somebody throw off your energetic field because you're sharing energy with them when you have sex with them, right? Look at the Emperor. Look at the masculine energy. Balance within the masculine as well. We'll get into that in another reading. But with the Seven of Cups, you know, you might start to believe delusionally, like, oh my God, am I pretty? Am I small enough? Am I big enough? Am I this? You know, because you're picking up on somebody else's insecurities. You've allowed somebody to release their spirit into you, quite literally. That's what sex is, right? So then you start to pick up on their DNA codes and their low vibrational frequencies and what they've gone through. It's almost like reading somebody's Akashic record. I remember listening to the Shadow Empress on her channel, and she talked about how she had an encounter, a physical sexual encounter with somebody, and how she was able to see his memories, basically. And he told her, I can't be with you, right? Because he accused her of being a witch. Well, in reality, she was so receptive. She was so tapped in. She was so open that she was able to literally read his spirit, right? But then you have that sexual healing. This is how we're able to heal as healers. Why so many men want to return back to the womb. Why so many men like to have sex. It's safe there. And when you see a woman in balance, like, oh my gosh, she's so beautiful. She's in balance. She's catering to her feminine side. Now, when there is a violation, you thrust her into the Queen of Swords. That means that she's communicating something to the physical body where she's got to stand up for herself. Look, I can't make that up. Five of Swords in a reverse. She's communicating, hey, something about your energy is off. I don't know how I know, but I know. And whatever you're including me in, my physical body, by way of violating this relationship, I want no parts of it. Five of Swords is like intuition, but it's in the reverse. This is like exposing somebody through your physical body. You're like, I know he's cheating. I can feel it. Right? You get that instinct, or you have a dream, and then you take a Queen of Cups energy, any sign. Because when you're in the Queen of Cups energy, you're open and you're receptive, and you thrust a Queen of Cups into the Queen of Swords, Queen of Wands energy. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. Wait a minute. Now she's having a different conversation with her physical body. She's saying, and then she might take her body away. She's saying, oh no, I got to get rid of this energy. Yeah, I can't make it up. Look, Eight of Cups. That's like walking away from an empty cup, something that doesn't hold any type of emotion, or it's not equally receptive or reciprocated. There's no balance there. It's like, hey, I thought you were going to love me the way I was loving you. And I'm only using the feminine energy as an example. I want to go deeper into the masculine's energy, but I want to have this conversation with the feminines first, and even for the masculines, because masculines need to tap into their feminine energy within. Right? This would lead to less disrespect of the feminine body, you know, more respect on what our bodies go through, ebb and flow every 28 days, having cycles, having children, violating, you know, people who have violated our feminine energy, ex-lovers, things like that. God bless the man who comes in and heals parts of the woman that, you know, they didn't hurt. Healing wounds that they themselves didn't inflict. It takes a very special man to do so. But he's got to be in touch with his heart, his feminine side, and his brain coherence, right? He's got to have balance over his sexual organs, knowing that he too is somebody to be had. Like, no, I know my value. I know the world says, hey, I got to have bodies. You know, how many bodies you got? But he's saying, no, I respect myself. I don't want to sleep with just anybody. Like, no, I'm not doing that. Because he's giving parts of himself away, right? We'll get into that later. So feminine energy, when it's violated, this could cause like stomach pains, constipation, things in the Virgo energy. The Virgo energy is so pure. That is your intestines, okay? That's your stomach area. That's where you get your feelings. That's where you carry a lot of your energy. That's where you are on the receiving end of sexual energy, right? So that Virgo energy, you go into purification. Yeah, you go into purification. Look, the Lover's in the reverse. I can't make this up. You violated me. You hurt me, you know. And then this in turn affects the heart, affects the breathing, the air, the earth, your whole physical vessel. It absolutely is traumatic. It's like a death. It's a death to the idea of what I thought this could be, but it's not. Talking to my feminines, the Lovers in the reverse, right? So then you have to walk away. 8 of Cups. You have to make a decision to stay in something that could just be satisfying your physical body at this point, because once you know that you've been violated, you allow your spirit to go to sleep. And then you become unconscious. Then you just start doing things unconsciously, staying with somebody you don't even know why you stand with them. And then that just takes you down a rabbit hole, and you realize self-love was all that it was. Codependency, toxic, trauma bonding, whatever. This always ends in one lover ending up like leaving another person. When you stay with somebody and they disrespect you to this capacity for a long period of time, it'll make you tired. It makes you old. You get sick. I've seen women that look so old and so worn out. And finally, oh, I've been with him 27 years. And finally, he's committed, but not really. And then he'll look really, really good. And she looks all dried out. Masculines, again, we will discuss this in your reading. This is for the feminines, but again, you can tap in because this is important information, right? So the Lovers in the reverse, right? Somebody's made a decision to violate the spiritual contract, right? Having sex with somebody is a spiritual contract. It's a marriage, if you will. The two become one, quite literally. Yeah, I can't make it up. And you thrust the Queen of Cups into the Queen of Swords, it's a wrap. When a woman's fed up, it ain't nothing you can do about it. It's like falling out of love. No matter how you see it, no matter how you see it, it's literally just like that. When that divine feminine energy starts to realize her value and she starts to process heart, brain, cognitively what has actually happened to her earth, what has happened to her water, what has happened to her air, she then becomes a warrior, and she is not to be messed with. She has learned something. She takes on a different look. She takes on a different stance. Now, she's either going to dwindle down a dark rabbit hole, or she's going to come out a female warrior. And in order to do that, she has to tap into her masculine energy. Again, Queen of Swords. The biggest misconception is that her feminine energy is not still there. No, she has it on reserve. Now it's not lying dormant. She's not putting it beneath the surface, never to be exposed, shared, or examined. But instead, she's saying, I am reserving this for somebody that understands this feminine energy, the value of it. So she restrains herself. She goes celibate. She balances out her energy. She breaks soul ties. She does it. Yeah, look. Trauma bonding. Look at the 8 of Swords. Look at the soul ties. You know, he slept with somebody. She slept with somebody. They slept with somebody. All these people slept with somebody. And you were over here being pure. You were over here in your Piscean energy and Temperance energy, being loving and caring and faithful to somebody that wanted to share their body with more than one person, right? Some people believe in polygamy. I think it's unnatural. You know, oh, let's live like the animals. Some things are unnatural. Okay. Then you have asexual people that don't even like to have sex at all. I mean, you know, it's a lot going on. One might believe that maybe their inner man and woman are so balanced, they just make love to themselves, and their masculine and feminine energy makes them feel whole. One should seek to do that anyway, whether you want to have sex with somebody or not, right? But reaching for the external will always lead you to a bonding energy. Oh my God, girl, he was so fine. You know, I've heard women say, oh, he is the worst thing for me, but whoo, that's sex. That's like selling your soul. That's like literally selling your soul for cheap. It never ends well. You know, it never ends well. Okay. So when you thrust a Queen of Cups energy into, yeah, I can't make it up. And you thrust her into the Goddess of Wands energy, which is fire elements. Okay. Sagittarius, Aries, and Leo energy. She then becomes fire and air. You got to walk through fire literally to get to her heart. You have to walk through it because of what somebody else did, okay? And that sometimes is unfortunate because the emperor is saying, hey, I'm balanced. I too have been hurt, but I've healed. I'm balanced. My masculine energy is not out of whack, even though the world is telling me I got to be macho, that men can't cry, right? And he's coming along to take a test in order to get close to this feminine. But the test is predicated on her revelatory experiences, on what she's been through. She's, you know, her body has memory. The water in her has memory. Her earth has memory. Now, here's the thing. When you get into this goddess of swords energy and the goddess of wands energy, this is a very interesting time because it gives opportunity to become a new woman. But if I'm a new woman, then I have to think differently, right? About myself. Doesn't mean that, you know, I'm out here open to making the same mistakes. Like, it's not that type of, you know, it's not, I'm not taking anything with me that I don't need, which could be a way of seeing myself, a way of being, right? Sexually and physically. Yeah, I can't make it up. Balance. Look at that yin yang energy. Pentacle, earth, physical body, right hip, left breast, left ear, right foot, left foot, and on and on and on and on. Left leg, right leg. It's a flow. It should go like this. And the only way for that to happen is for me to pay attention to my water and my breathing within me. So many people are dehydrated within. There's elixirs within. There's ancient secrets within. There's portals within. But if there's trauma, if there's this inability to seek healing, or or you're restricting your healing, meaning tapping into that knowledge, you bind yourself, sometimes for a moment, sometimes for years. And ultimately, you turn into a toxic situation on a physical level. So when you think about what happened or what he did, you're still moving with a certain intensity. Like, I can't believe he did that to me. It's like, okay, that was 8 years ago. Whoa, don't bind yourself like that. Right? So allowing your inner man, creating the man within that you want to manifest on the external, but allowing that inner man to heal your inner feminine and your inner feminine to cater to that masculine energy, that's balance within. Self-esteem, high expectations for self. I can make it up. That is your 4 of wands. Look at that twin flame energy. Look at that twin flame energy. And then you start to attract people who are balanced just like you, masculines who respect the self-love that you have for yourself. They respect your boundaries. You respect them, and it's equal give and take. That's a healthy relationship, and you're the high priestess. So I'm going to tap in to part 2, but I'm going to do this in the ascending masters level. I want to go more into the sexual organs, orgasms, talking about when you release and receive, biology, you know, as it relates to that, how the two really become one, co-creating. We're going to talk more about that. So meet me there. For those of you that joined me here, I thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. If this resonated with you, like, love, share, comment, give it a thumbs up. You know, I really do appreciate that. And I will absolutely see you in the membership. Shout out to all the people that joined the memberships. I am eternally grateful. I'm really excited about the group. So let's just, yeah, we'll meet each other over there. I love y'all, okay? I'll see you soon. Peace be with you.